your German is definitely developed to quite a good level right now.
It's not bad. Like, it's good enough now to speak to people in customer service. I mean, I'll still have some difficulties, but it's enough, like, for the most part.
Yeah, you got difficulties because it's customer service in Germany, not because your German is bad.
Oh, okay.
It's the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. I'm your host, Shaun. Visit thegermanyexperience.de for more information about the podcast, and visit the YouTube channel for the show, the Germany Experience on YouTube. Links are in the show notes. I'm also looking for future guests for the podcast. So if you have a story to tell, or even if you just love to talk, get in touch with me. I would love to hear from you. And who knows, if it works out, maybe you will be on this podcast. Now, I've said it before over the past 2 weeks, and I'm going to say it again, but I swear I'm not just saying this because I'm an affiliate partner of theirs, but I am truly enjoying the Wunderbla German course that I am doing. After developing so many bad habits in my German over the years, this is exactly the thing that I was looking for to help me get better. And I'm just at 10 lessons now, but I feel like this course just magically knows what I need to focus on. In fact, in my last lesson, I got 65% of the answers correct again, which is not good, But it also shows that the course has correctly assessed my language level, and the lessons are now really helping me hone in on improving the things where I have problems. And I have problems, people. How it works is you get around 3 lessons a week, which you can do online. You can also, what I like about them is they only take about 20 minutes or half an hour to do. And once you've done them, you get your corrections immediately. And if you're like me, you go back to your corrections several times to really try and internalize what that day's lesson was about. And also, this is the longest that I've been engaged in a German course in over 8 years. So needless to say, my expectations have been exceeded, and I'd love to hear what you think of it. You can sign up for a free month of online lessons from Wunderbla. Go to thegermanyexperience.de/German, and all the information you need is there, and you can sign up there as well. So here in Bavaria, there's good news because there's going to be more relaxing of the COVID measures coming our way. And Bavaria has been one of the strictest states in Germany about this. But this week, fitness studios will be opening up again. But here's the thing I got to wondering today when I read that news article. Why does Germany insist on naming coronavirus things with English words? Now, they don't do it all the time, but they do it in some specific examples. For example, first we had Click and Meet, which is where you'd order online and then you go to the store to fetch the goods. Click and Meet. Now, Germany, you have this wonderful ability to put together random words to make longer, very descriptive words. It's one of the things I love about German. Why do you need English words that honestly sound a bit strange to English people? In all fairness and the grand scheme of things, I guess Click and Meet was okay, I guess. But now, with the fitness studios opening this week, they call it, and I'm not even kidding here, Click and Fit. Click and Fit. That doesn't even make sense. It sounds like I'm going to click something and then try and fit it into something else. And while we're on it, by the way, what the hell is a fitness studio? English countries don't call them that, Germany. They call them gyms. I'm going to the gym. That's how you say it in English-speaking countries. Well, at least I think so. I've been out of English-speaking country for a long time. In fact, it's become so normal for me to say fitness studios. But my favorite thing, I'm digressing a bit here, but my favorite thing about fitness studio is that Germans write it as one word. So they've taken gyms, renamed them to fitness studios, another English word, moved those 2 words together, and now you have fitness studios as a German word with 3 S's in the middle. It's fantastic. It is fantastic. So, but what is the reason for this? Does it sound cooler to Germans when it's in English? Like, are they more willing to do it if it's click and fit than if it was Trainingstermin? And yeah, I looked it up. A workout is called training in German. So, on to my guest this week. He is Lawin, and he is originally from the Philippines, but landed up studying and working in the Netherlands. He got a job in Germany eventually, and now he lives in Germany. He's also the host of the podcast Pop Your Cultural Cherry, and I will admit, I have some podcast name envy. At any rate, one of his episodes was about his preconceived notions about Europe before he moved here. I totally related to what I heard. And so I invited him to come on the podcast to discuss our ideas of Europe and Germany before we got here. Lawin is a very funny guy, and I had a lot of fun chatting with him. Here he is. And welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you on. You are a fellow podcaster, and you host a show called, and I love this title, Pop Your Cultural Cherry. Welcome to the show, Lawin.
Thanks for inviting me, Shaun. I'm really excited to do this with you.
Yeah. I discovered you, if you want to put it that way, in on Lisa Janss's channel. Lisa Janss was a previous guest on my show, and she also interviewed me. She's a job consultant here in Germany, specifically for internationals. And you, I think, had been her interview. She'd interviewed you the week before, and that's how I got to know you. And I got to see that you had a podcast. And then I was like, oh, this another podcaster in the German scene. And then when I got in touch with you, you told me you'd also been a guest on the Expat Cast. So
correct. Yeah. So I think the scene is quite small. So like we're bouncing around with the same people. And yes. Yeah, I did the Expat Cast, and Nicola like told me about you. So.
Okay. So it's very cool that we got in touch, and I'm very, very glad that we did. So maybe what you can do is start off by telling me where you're originally from and how it is that you've ended up in your roundabout way in Germany.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the Philippines. I moved to Europe in 2017. That was to study actually in the Netherlands. So I did my master's not far from the German border in a city called Maastricht. And then after graduating 2018, I got a job and officially started working in Germany in 2019. And that was just literally across the border, which is around about, 30, 40 kilometers from that city in the Netherlands to my current city in Germany, which is called Aachen. So yeah, so that's how I kind of came here. I came here simply because I did like a backpacking trip in 2016, and I liked Europe so much, and I thought, decided I'll try to find a way to make it in Europe and try to find a way I can stay and, explore opportunities here. And so far, so good.
So it was just that you kind of really liked the idea of Europe, and then you ended up living here.
Yeah. So so when I went here in 2016, I went with a friend who's actually Dutch. And basically I had 30 days to kind of, see Europe, and I had no expectations. I just wanted to see a music festival, right. Drink a lot of beer, see different historical landmarks or whatever. I think I was able to visit Prague, Budapest, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium. I think I was able to do 5 countries in 30 days. But I really like the idea of just, being able to slip across the border whenever you want to without any checks or balances. So
yes. How long have you been in Europe, did you say?
So I came 2017 September. That makes it, 3.5, a little more than 3.5 years, I guess. Yeah. So a year and a half in the Netherlands and like 2 years in Germany.
Was the experience in Germany any different from your time in Netherlands? Was it very...
Yeah, because the two cities I lived in and I currently live in are quite close to each other. I'd say that in a lot of like cultural ways, it's very similar, but obviously like people is what really makes it like different. And I think just the way that the Dutch are, everybody speaks like multiple languages. So people speak, at least in this part of the Netherlands, they speak Dutch, German, and English. So I had no problems communicating, like when I needed stuff like customer service, going to the doctor, going to the supermarket. And at the same time, there's also like this real push for like digitalization, and which is like a big topic in Germany. And in the Netherlands, I think they've already set that up. So they're pretty much there already. And obviously like bicycles. But besides those 3 things, like I'd say it's a lot very similar to each other.
Okay. And what has been moving from the Philippines to Europe, what has been your biggest difficulties with that move, do you think?
Right. Actually, there's several. Obviously, the most common one that a lot of people would say is the language issue in Germany. I think also one of the things I thought, before I came here, is that a lot of people would have spoken English like at a high level. but that's not the reality.
No.
Yeah, so I think that's something that's quite difficult, but at the same time, it's more than just language. It's also culture. Socially, well, the Philippines and like Southeast Asia, this part, Thailand or wherever you go, Malaysia, Indonesia, people are quite similar in a social sense that it's very easy to make connections. It's very easy to socialize with people. And I kind of feel that in Germany, you know, there's a lot of distance between people. People are very distant from each other. It's not just me being, a foreigner. Maybe it plays a role that I don't speak German, but it's more that people don't really have that urge to, hang out like, hey, after office, let's, 10 people, let's go grab a drink. That will never happen. Like, I don't think that'll, maybe you'd need a special event.
Especially not spontaneously. Like it's, a lot of people on my podcast have complained, like, you can't just say on a Friday, hey, let's go for a beer this afternoon, this evening after work or something, because it's so spontaneous. But I will say I have met spontaneous Germans as well. So of course it's all just a generalization, but for the most part, yes, Germans, when they first meet you, are not just going to drop everything and go for a beer on the same day that you suggested.
Yeah, I think on average, like, it's not like that. So the thing is, in the Philippines, like, socializing is such it's who we are, it's our identity, and at the same time, when it comes to work, it's you're sure on a Friday night you're gonna drink with colleagues. It just depends on which colleagues, which group you're gonna hang out. But you may have children, you may have a family, but it doesn't matter. You're drinking with your colleagues on Friday. It's a given.
The way it is.
It's just the way it is. And besides the drinking part, just like, socializing, making friends. Like, I've been here kind of 2 years, and I can't really say I have super like a close knit of like friends who are like local. So that's it's
Of course, you've also had a global pandemic make that also way more difficult as well than it would have been.
Exactly. I think probably with my level of German it would be a bit easier right now, but because of the pandemic, it just cuts you off from society.
Yeah, it does. It does. What is your level right now? Have you got a pretty good level?
Well, I'm studying B2, like the latter half of B2.
Okay.
That's on paper. I don't know how good I am. Like, in reality, I have to take the test after this to see if that's my real level. I saw on your Instagram post that like, your real level is B2, but I'm sure that's not true.
It's not even B2. It's not even B2, Lawin. It's B1. It's B1 heading towards B2. I was like, screw this test. So but I had a lot of people, exactly what you're saying. I had quite a few people message me and say that rating is very sort of generalized. So if you're really bad at grammar, or you've average grammar and excellent vocabulary, you'll still get rated like quite a lot lower, just because of that sort of weighting that it does. And also, it just depends on what situation you're in. Or like, there's a lot of situations where I know a lot about something, and then I'm confident about it. I can express myself, and maybe I'm a C1 or whatever. But then other situations I'm a B1. But screw that test,
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It's a great course that I'm doing, but I was just surprised. And the people just didn't care when I asked them, they're like 65% of them said, yeah, you should be further along than B1 after 14 years in Germany. And they're right. I can't argue with that, but go easy on me, people. Come on.
I'd probably be A1 on the same test. I'm pretty sure I'd really...
but so your German is definitely developed to quite a good level right now.
It's not bad. Like, it's good enough now to speak to people in customer service. I mean, I'll still have some difficulties, but it's enough, like, for the most part.
Yeah, you got difficulties because it's customer service in Germany, not because your German is bad.
Oh, okay.
But that's a whole topic for another podcast. Talking about podcasts, you've got one, as I said at the beginning, Pop Your Cultural Cherry. So maybe just explain what your podcast is about.
Yeah, so I started a podcast in December of last year, and that's obviously because, well, the pandemic. And I always wanted to kind of start maybe a YouTube channel or something, just because I felt that people from maybe the Philippines, or also like Asian people, Asian content creators here in Europe, are kind of less represented, like on the internet, on YouTube or on podcast or whatever. So I thought maybe like by making one, I could share a different dimension or a different perspective on how Europe is. So I talk about cultural stuff. I interview mostly Asian people. I don't know, probably that will change in the future because like I kind of kept my topics a bit general. So it could be done by anybody. But now because of my network, obviously like my friends are from Philippines or a lot of them are from other parts of Asia. So I thought that I'd start there and maybe grow it a bit. But yeah, it's about like, day in the life of, or what's your inspiration for coming to Europe. But it's pretty much about Asians in Europe or experiences that Asian people have in Europe.
Yeah, okay. So definitely check your podcast out. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. Pop Your Cultural Cherry is what it's called, and I will say that title many times because I enjoy saying it. So let's get to our topic that we wanted to talk about today. With you coming from the Philippines, and I came from South Africa. And what happens when someone is going to come over? They've got a lot of preconceived notions of what that country is going to be like what Germany is going to be like. In your case, it was Europe because you were moving to the Netherlands, as we've mentioned before, but you've also now had some experience with Germany. And you also did an episode on this. I think it was your second episode of your podcast was about your preconceived notions that you had about Europe before you came here. So I thought that's an interesting thing to talk about because everyone before they come has a preconceived notion, and then we can maybe just discuss how it was different. And I do also refer to people to that episode of yours because you had quite a lot of good points. But why don't you just give me some of what yours were? Right.
So I think in general, I had like not really a good idea of what Europe actually is. And that's simply because, the Philippines actually is quite a big country. Maybe a lot of people don't know it, but we have like 100 million people. And 10 million Filipinos actually live abroad. But that's usually in the US, Australia, Canada, Middle East. But not a lot of Filipino people go to Europe. So therefore, like I didn't have friends who live there or relatives who study there or whatever. So everything I hear is just through news. I don't have like experiences of other people. So I had like a distorted view. I kind of knew a bit because like our history is more connected to Spain. So my image of Europe was always like Spain.
You're right.
But yeah, so my idea was like old buildings, a lot of history, castles. You hear about wine and like luxury items. Whatever cars, like in Germany, you have everyone would like drive a BMW or whatever. Obviously, I had this idea of good beer, which is actually something that's true, and I can confirm it is pretty it is pretty good.
Is it? What is Filipino beer like?
So our biggest brewery is called San Miguel, and it's actually was connected to the San Miguel beer that comes from Spain now. So you see it, they export this San Miguel beer, and they were like one company before until it spun off. So it's kind of similar. They'd have like a similar history to that. So it's average, but you just have a lot more variation in Europe.
Yeah, especially in Germany. I don't know what it's like in Netherlands, but in Germany there is a lot of beer.
Man, Belgium and Netherlands. I mean, I live in Germany now, so I have to respect, your listeners and the people in Germany. But Belgian beer and Dutch beer,
pretty good.
They kind of take the edge. Sorry.
Whoa, I knew we were going to have a controversial topic at some point. I'm going to have very angry Germans. Lawin, I'm going to have very angry Germans writing to me. I have some Germans that listen to this podcast, and they happily write me angry emails. So thank you very much for that controversy.
It's because of this. What is it? The
Reinheitsgebot. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Reinheitsgebot. Yeah, so I think that kind of limits the art and the innovation in beer. Right. So this is just my idea.
Although I do think that there are a lot of independent breweries all over the place that do make good beers, but there are few and far between. And in general, I had a guest on my show, a beer connoisseur on my show earlier this year. He brews his own beer at home, and he was saying like the thing about German beer is it's very similar. It's all very similar. So when you get a Helles, you always getting the same kind of Helles. When you get a Weiss beer, it's all very similar from brewery to brewery here in Germany. And I think that's a good point. There are some that are maybe better than others or that deviate more. But like you said, between the Reinheitsgebot and the standard way that they brew beer in Germany, there's a lot of beers, but not that much variation between the beers.
Like what's the difference between like a Pils from Kronbacher or Bitburger?
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I don't know, but I'm probably going to be taken to task by Germans again for that answer.
I'm sorry.
Just know it.
I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, Shaun.
Jesus, just stop it now. I'm going to try.
Okay.
I need this podcast to go another few years. Lawin, my God.
Okay, no more beer talk.
No more beer. Don't mention the war or the beer. But yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying there. And so your impression was that the beer would be good in general. We're talking about European beer in general, and your expectation has been met.
Yes, or beaten. Like, yeah, it's mind blowing sometimes that you go to some breweries or like some special beer bars, beer cafes that have like, I don't know, a billion. I don't even know how many. Just too many.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think for me as well, it wasn't an expectation that I had in my mind, although, you think of German beer and you think of the Oktoberfest beers and so on. And that is something that I did have in my mind, that the beer would be good. But what I didn't expect was how many beers there are here. And it was just for my area, like in not even Bavaria, just the Franconia region where I live. I saw a poster once of all the breweries in this region. And it is more than I could drink. If I spent every day drinking a new beer from this region, I probably would take 3 years to get through all of the brands and stuff here in just in one region. So it just blows my mind how many breweries there are.
Which does not sound like a bad idea, actually.
No. I did that for the first few years that I was here. I was like diligently working my way through all of the beers. But then I was like, I'm just gonna drink beer.
I'll go back to a little bit more preconceptions that I had of Europe. So I said earlier about how I thought people in Europe in general would have like a higher level of English, and that's because in Asia I've traveled a lot through Asia and obviously seen a lot of foreigners come to the Philippines. You meet a lot of tourists from Europe, a lot of foreigners, maybe some expats as well, and they all speak English. So I was like, yeah, probably that's how it is there. But apparently that's not. They're there because they do speak English, so it's different.
It's tough, but I also found that in Netherlands, and I think you mentioned this on your episode as well, in Netherlands there's a lot more English speaking than in Germany. I think in the big cities you will get a lot of English, but in smaller cities and towns, it definitely is not the case that everyone can speak English or will speak English with you.
Yeah, it has something to do also with how they set up, their cinema and how they show their films. Everything's subtitled there.
Yes.
And in Germany everything's dubbed. I think that makes a big difference.
100% the difference, because even if you look at Sweden, for example, I traveled to Sweden once, and to get to where I was going in Sweden, I went through tiniest little towns, and everyone spoke English, and not just English, but a fantastic English, like a fantastic level of English that I would be envious to have that level of German. So it is definitely different. Whereas here in Germany, if you go through the smaller towns, you will definitely not get that level of good English. And like you said, it comes to the movies and the TV. In Sweden, it's also, obviously they have their Swedish programming, and the same in Netherlands, but then also when they show American movies, it's in English with subtitles. So it just leads to a lot more English learning, I think.
One more thing that I found really interesting, like one notion I had of Europe is actually that Europe is super high tech. Because like, I've been to other developed countries, but in Asia, like, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong. So I thought like, Europe would kind of be like these countries, but with castles and beer and white people. So this was my idea of like, it's a developed continent. And everything's super high tech as well. But actually, this is not that true, especially in Germany. It's like, it's okay, but it's not. Yeah.
It's not super high tech, no. I definitely think that large parts of Asia are definitely way ahead when it comes to high tech things that you see every day in public. Basically, it's maybe there's a lot of innovation going on in Germany and a lot of high tech stuff happening, production or something like that. But we're not seeing it in everyday life. Germany, where are you keeping it?
I think they build it for export, but they don't use it locally. This is what I think.
No, because no one wants to change things locally. They don't want to no, let's just keep doing it the same way as we do it, but let's sell that cool stuff to somewhere else.
Thus digitalizero is the big topic.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge topic in Germany, and I think it's taking steps ahead. I think it has taken some steps ahead in the last year or two, especially with coronavirus and stuff happening. But still, some of these measures that are in place now, I just think if you had a better digitalized system, you wouldn't have all of this weirdness that the government says that sometimes you have to do this, and when you go into stores, you have to pick up a corb, like a basket, to go into the store, and that's your that's their way of keeping track of how many people are in the store. I'm like, there's got to be high-tech ways of doing this, Germany. So yeah,
I think in a lot of countries in Asia, you use like QR codes. You have like an app that like tracks everything, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
21st century. No, Germany, we carry baskets so that we can be counted in the store.
I watched a DW YouTube video the other day about like the myth of German efficiency, and one of it was about it was about the coronavirus, and one topic was actually about that how these Gesundheitsamt like in different regions track corona and do everything is via fax up to today. Until recently was via fax, and I think it was only early this year that they changed that, and I'm like, seriously, I didn't know that, but okay.
I didn't even know people still use fax machines, Germany. Oh God. Okay, so yes, digitalization continues to be an issue in Germany with their fax coronavirus tracking. Oh, I love that. So what else did you have? I like the idea that you came across a lot of foreigners, both, and I think in the episode as well, you said also on your trip, your backpacking tour through Europe. So obviously you're going to a lot of touristic areas and you're getting a picture of what it's like to be living in Germany, but you're only getting from a certain subset of people. That's the people who travel or the people who work and live in those tourist areas. But I think you said also that one of your things that you were most looking forward to is traveling in Europe. And what was your expectation there?
So I thought it would be, well, obviously without Corona, right? I thought it would be a lot. So it is quite easy to travel in Europe. Like you can hop on a train, you hop on a Flixbus, you take one of these Ryanair flights to wherever, and you can get to another country. I thought that it would be like a lot easier. But actually there's so much to see. Like in even just small parts of Europe, small parts of Germany, like there's always something to see. There's some cool natural spots that's not on TripAdvisor or whatever, that's not on these blogs or whatever. There's always something to see. So, I mean, as much as I'd like to, tick off X number of countries in Europe that I've visited, I also want to take my time and kind of see, how it really is, and, some of these places that are off the beaten path. And I think I've been able to do that in my region now with Corona. Well, obviously because I don't have a choice, right?
Yeah, so you gotta stay around local.
Weekend hikes and stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things that you said in that episode, just to move on to the next thing now, is actually something that I could very much relate to, and that was the image that you had in your mind about security in Europe. And I think this is something where now people from European countries or America or the UK and even Australia and New Zealand wouldn't quite understand. For people who come from countries like South Africa or like the Philippines, this is a big topic or a big thing that we have in our minds. Like you can see how Europe seems to be different from your home country. So maybe just explain to me what your conception of Europe was and how it was in the Philippines, basically.
Right. So actually, one of the reasons why I moved here, obviously, well, economic reasons, like the salaries are quite good, the jobs are quite good, but also because of the security, like the general overall security. So there's good security in terms of your health, in terms of like health insurance and stuff like this, like public health insurance, which we don't have back home. But at the same time, just like day-to-day crime. So in the Philippines, I mean, we have a lot of like petty crime that happens on the street. So I'm always kind of like weary when I travel. When I take public transportation, I always have to, watch my back, look at like who the people are beside me. Try to feel around if someone's trying to feel for my wallet. Like I'm always like feeling my pockets. If like if I'm on the metro, I'm feeling my pockets, or my hands are in my pockets, just to make sure that people don't kind of try to take my wallet. So I always had this spider sense, like I also always know if something bad's, have already an idea if some bad person's coming on, like the train or on the bus or something. In Europe in the beginning, I had this, obviously I had this mindset already, so
Yeah.
I would do the same thing, look around you, feel your pockets every 1 minute, but
Yeah.
apparently you don't need it. It's so it feels so safe. Like I can walk home at 5 a.m. I can walk home, I don't know, 3 kilometers from my friend's place.
Yeah.
And nothing's gonna happen to me, even if
Yeah.
the so-called I walk through a bad neighborhood, which they would consider bad, is actually
Oh God, there are bad neighborhoods here. I mean, like, I cannot even compare them to the bad neighborhoods in South Africa. Like, the bad neighborhoods here are probably like the best neighborhoods in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like, it's true. I think, and I do remember you saying something like this on your episode that you recorded about this. It does depend, of course. You're a guy, first of all, which makes a big difference.
Right.
So obviously, I think women would have, wherever they are in the world, they always have some worries of their that we don't experience, that we don't even know anything about. So there's that. And you said you're also quite a imposing guy, so people might not think that. So from that aspect, yes, I think that I've experienced the exact same thing. Like it's, and even for, if I think about the danger for women here, it's present still, but in South Africa, it's a lot more dangerous. There's a lot. It's just the difference, I mean, is amazing between the two countries.
You just can't compare. You can't compare like in general Europe to the rest of the, well, not the rest of the world, but a lot of places in the world.
Yeah.
It's just like a different world basically.
Yeah,
like
it is.
Just having that mindset alone, like that's drilled to us, and probably you have that same mindset as well in South Africa when you go
Absolutely.
out.
Yeah.
But here you can just be a bit worry free, and maybe in very rare situations that would happen, but on average, like you're fine,
Yeah, and something I've said on this podcast as well before is that people don't understand the sense of freedom. When my wife and I first moved here, and we could walk around the city Innenstadt at 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night, and just walk through a stroll through the Innenstadt, the city center. That is a sense of freedom that we felt like in that moment. Like we were like, this is amazing, because in South Africa, you just don't do that. Even at 10 o'clock in the morning, you wouldn't necessarily take a stroll through a city center, and definitely not at 11 o'clock at night. So there's a certain sense of freedom that we didn't experience back home that we have here. And that is one way that one of my expectations of Germany was 100% met, and even more so, because it's just this amazing feeling of just being free, and not to say there's no crime, but it's less.
Obviously there's crime, but it's a lot less. But I also think like this feeling also of not having to worry at all, or maybe just a bit, is a luxury actually that a lot of people
really
cannot experience. Will never experience, and it's a bit sad to think of it that way, because but here this is the norm, and that's one of like the biggest draws of Europe, I think.
It is. So that was, we based our move to Europe very much on the assumption that we had in our minds that Europe was safe in terms of crime and in terms of that kind of thing. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we moved here. We also loved Europe. We loved traveling here. But one of the biggest things was we were looking for somewhere where we could be safe and raise a family, and, feel okay about raising a family here.
Yeah, I think also here in Aachen, because we live so close to the Dutch border, bicycle theft is rampant here. Yeah. And what I hear is like when they steal the bicycle, they bring it to the other side.
Right.
So that you'll never see it in that city. But I mean, that's a small price to pay, Like
it is.
It's a small price to pay for the luxury of being safe. So I really like this.
Yeah, and in South Africa, I don't know how it is in the Philippines, but in South Africa, you could lose your life for a cell phone. Like if they want money, you could actually lose your life because somebody wanted to steal something from you. And that's just, I feel like if someone's going to take my phone here, they're probably not going to kill me for it, basically.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Here, it's like, I think maybe the thieves here are opportunistic, but they're not that desperate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a difference. When you're desperate versus when you're opportunistic like that, there's a fine line between those two states.
Absolutely. So what other, if any, I don't know if you've got anything left on your list, but what other sort of preconceived notions did you have?
Yeah, so I think I was mentioning earlier how, I didn't know anybody who ended up in Europe. I didn't know a lot about Europe. So I thought it was kind of like an unattainable kind of dream. Like that's why people end up in Canada or Australia, is because, maybe because like Europe is not like, it's not that easy to end up there. And it actually isn't.
No.
And I actually, obviously, I've been working in the Philippines for, I don't know, 6 years. I worked for like the biggest telecom company there at the time. And then I thought with my experience, maybe I could get a job. But actually, and it's normal in my country to just do, finish your bachelor's and then go work. But apparently in Germany and a lot of other countries in Europe, like just having a bachelor's is not enough, like a lot of places would, require masters, or you'd make you a lot more competitive. So that's kind of how I also ended up here. And that was obviously my notion was also that everybody's kind of highly educated because of this kind of requirement that I was researching on. And actually that's not really true that everyone's super highly educated.
No.
But yeah, so it was it is attainable, but then there are like some extra barriers that you would need to, if you wanted to, come here and be competitive. Unlike, for example, you wanted to just, go to Australia or Canada, where I think it's more open in terms of like your educational level.
Mm-hmm. I think so. But Germany is very difficult to get into, and yeah, especially if you don't have the right qualifications that they're looking for. Yeah. And I think that leads me on to one of my expectations before I left South Africa was also, and actually I think something that I spoke to Lisa Jans on our episode about, is about the salaries in Europe. When I compared them to South African salaries, I would just look at the averages. And I was like, whoa, that is amazing. Like, I'm going to go to Europe and I'm going to make it rain over there when I'm earning these amounts, because it was like sometimes double and even triple what you would get for the same job in Europe. And in South Africa, it was just incredible. So my preconceived notion was, I didn't come here to make money. That's never been my goal. But I just thought we're going to be comfortable because, we're going to be earning so much money. But what I didn't factor into my preconceived notion is that food costs so much here compared to South Africa. Like, again, that food can cost twice, 3 times what you would pay in South Africa. So yeah, my preconceived notion was that I'm going to be earning great salaries. But the truth of the matter was, the cost of living in Germany was also a lot more expensive in South Africa, in Germany than in South Africa.
There's actually one thing that I never really took into consideration. So I spoke about, this whole, how everything's safe, how everything's free, how everything kind of works.
Yeah.
And that's because you pay a lot of taxes. And I never actually put that into consideration. Like, I also saw the salaries and like, oh man, that's a lot of money. Yeah. And then, it's still a lot of money, but it's not that as advertised because the taxes like kind of cut them.
Yeah, the taxes are amazing. We pay a lot of taxes in South Africa, so I already had that in my mind. Like, it wasn't so much of a shock. But yes, it is a shock for people who may not be expecting it. It's like 40-something% sometimes, depending on what you're earning. I don't know. It's crazy.
Hey, but the nice thing is that you see the benefits of it. Like, at least you see, some new public facilities being built or whatever, and you see it with the healthcare or whatever. I mean, it would be worse if like you had high taxes, but it's just being stolen by politicians. But that's another topic.
It's another topic for another day. Right. Yeah, so that's all very interesting points. So it's a lot. It just demonstrates how much of a mindset that you can have going into a country, what your expectations are. You're always going to have those preconceived notions, and I think almost every single preconceived notion you have is either completely incorrect, or it will be completely superseded or exceeded by what you confronted with in the new country. So it's always interesting. So my question to you, Lawin, is, has living in Europe been rewarding for you?
Yeah. So prior to me coming to the Netherlands and Germany, like I've only always just lived in Manila, which is where I was also born. So that's the capital of the Philippines. It's a big city with 10 million people. And I never really had this idea of how my life would be outside. So basically my circle, my mindset, everything was very local. Yeah. And I think just by moving to Germany, experiencing a lot of things, like a new work culture, like just working here, like you learn a lot about the world. You also learn a lot about yourself, what you're capable of. Also just, the struggles of of like rebuilding your social life, the struggles of learning the language, all these experiences kind of play a part and make you a stronger person. So I think in that sense, like for personal development, it has been super rewarding because people here are very independent. And obviously I don't really have friends or family prior to me coming here. So I needed to be super independent and kind of get the mindset, the local mindset. And I think that made me,
Okay.
could be rewarding.
And my last question is, what advice do you have for foreigners coming to Germany? What's your biggest bit of advice?
I think you have to come to Germany with an open mind. Obviously, like we were talking about these preconceived notions, you'll always have them. Like you said, it could be like superseded, or it could be you're totally wrong about a notion. But don't let those kind of notions scare you about like moving or making that trip or making that big move of yours. And obviously, like, it would be cool if you knew where you wanted to end up in. Like I thought I wanted to be in the Netherlands, but I ended up in Germany. So I wasn't really able to prepare. So if like I could have could have predicted that I would be in Germany, I would have probably learned the language beforehand, at least the basics of the language.
Yeah.
But I think in general, the more important thing is really the mindset. Things will be different, especially if you're coming from the Philippines or wherever, maybe in South Africa. Things will be very different, but you just have to, be like a sponge and come here and be ready to learn as much as you can learn. And I think then it will be very rewarding for you. Like I said, try different stuff, try new beers, try new wines, go to different music festivals, and then you'll like learn to love Europe like how I have.
Absolutely. Great advice, Lawin. So where can people find you? Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. I don't have a Twitter, but you can find me on Popular Cultural Cherry. So you can just follow me there if you want to, have a conversation with me. I'm always online, and I'll always like respond to people's messages.
Yes. Yeah, he will. He replied to me, which is kind of nice. He is a responder. Unlike me sometimes on social media, I apologize to everyone. I do respond to everyone, but sometimes it takes 3 weeks. So I'm just saying, just be patient with me. It's been so much fun. I really recommend people go and listen to your podcast. And all the links are in the show notes. Lawin, thank you so much for making the time to come on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Shaun, thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, go and leave me a review online. You can go to thegermanyexperience.de/rate. And there you have an option to rate it on Apple Podcasts or on Podchaser, which is a website for podcast listeners. Or you could find out if the platform that you're listening to this podcast on has a way for you to rate podcasts. It all helps. And of course, recommend it to your friends if you like it, and let them know that this podcast is out there. Help spread the word. That's it from me for this week. Music in this episode, as always, by my band 10 Cent Janes. Additional music by Ryan Anderson until the end. This is the end. Auf Wiederhören.